Eric Rosenberg. We got Councilman Ben Shakespeare, Councilwoman Lena Mathis, Councilman Jarrett Waite, Councilman Danny Drake, and Councilman Wendell Goodler here. Appreciate everybody being here tonight. We'll go ahead and work right into the working agenda. Under item 2A, general business, the cemetery policy discussion. Brock, has Ben doing the lead on this, or did you do it, or Brad?
I can, I'll get a little bit of the lead and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Shakespeare as he requested this item to be on the agenda tonight. So a few weeks ago, we had there was a little issue with somebody wanting to have a burial over the weekend when some family was here, but our policy currently requires for a weekend burial to have 72-hour notice to coordinate everything with the mortuary, to make sure staff is available to dig, make sure things are done properly. And so we had one run into that issue where we didn't have the time frame, so we weren't able to accommodate that burial at the time. So the family has spoken with Ben, and Ben asked that we have a discussion about that cemetery burial policy tonight. So
the family would actually like to, Judge Walton and Mr. and Mrs. Walton would like to, they're supposed to be getting on. Did we send them the invite?
yeah, they're coming in. They just popped up in the waiting room. So
okay, I think it'd be important to kind of hear where they're coming from. So obviously with and they would be better than me to explain kind of their situation. And then coming from ours, I just reached out to other cities and then some of the mortuaries to see what other cities do on their policy. And I think the policy, the 72-hour policy from the cities I've checked with, I believe we do it because we have Fridays off. And so, but the other cities that I talked to and the mortuaries I talked to, the others are 48 hours. And I may be incorrect on that, but I'd like the Waltons to be able to maybe share their experience and a little bit of their frustration, because I think it also stems into Monday not doing morning burials as we're trying to get ready from the weekend. And obviously I think in talking to the mortuaries I've talked to, 80% of what they do falls on Saturdays. And so the 72-hour, again, I don't know everything that goes into it, but there has been some frustration brought up, and then this is kind of what brought it to a head. And I just saw, I don't know if there's things we can do, but I certainly think Mr. and Mrs. Walton need to kind of share and explain where they're coming from and maybe give us a little more insight on it.
well, as far as I know, the policy, Brad, I'd like to have Brad, he has the research, he what other cities are doing to answer that. But the policy, as far as I'm aware, Fridays, because we don't have Fridays off, we work Fridays, and the policy, I believe, has been that as long as I've been here. So I don't know what that is, but I'd like Brad if he's there, could answer some of these questions regarding what our policy is and how we came to that policy.
Can we get we probably ought to hear from the residents first on this, because I think it'll give the council, before we get into discussion on it, I think we need to hear, I spent a lot of time on the phone with them. I was disappointed. Under the situation, I'll let them explain it, that we couldn't accommodate with the family who had already coming to town and before. Anyway, I'll let them explain it, but I do think the council needs to hear from the residents on this, and then we can maybe have a little better discussion on it.
Are they on the call now, Brock?
Yes, they are.
John,
Can you hear from us?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Well, Kristen's father passed away on a Wednesday afternoon. And as Ben said, as is often the case, we had family that were already on their way to try and see him before he passed away. And unfortunately, most of them weren't able to make it, but the family decided Wednesday evening that they wanted to have a Saturday funeral. And the mortician said, okay, no problem. And then he called Thursday late morning and said he talked to the city and that we would have had to have let them know by the close of business on Wednesday for a Saturday funeral. Now, he didn't explain, I didn't talk to him directly, but well, I don't know that we need to get into that. He was pretty surprised that the city couldn't accommodate us. And so we had a Saturday funeral, but had to wait to bury Kristen's dad on a Monday. And it wasn't the end of the world, but it certainly we would have felt better about it if we'd have been accommodated. I certainly recognize that the city has to have rules and that the rules have to be followed. But in reaching a balance for what's appropriate for the city and what's an appropriate service for the citizens of the community, frankly, it just didn't feel like the right balance to me. As Ben pointed out, most funerals, a huge percentage of funerals are on Saturdays. And having a family member pass away on a Wednesday and desiring to have a Saturday funeral didn't seem out of the ordinary. So we just thought that maybe the policy should be revisited.
Brad, do you want to just explain to council what the policy says right now? Maybe some of the reasons for it? You need to unmute your mic, Brad.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him unmuted.
Is this a time when we're supposed to pull out a joke, Mayor? You want me to pull out one of the jokes?
Well, I was just going to say, this is, I think, the first time Brad's used his computer in his office for this meeting. He's always just been on his phone. That's probably the cause of the technical difficulties.
I would have the same problems with the new computer. Thank goodness they've got me set up to where all I've got to do is click in and don't touch anything.
He just dialed in.
Can you hear now?
Yeah. My apologies, everybody. We had a little audio issue here. For some reason, when the audio came on, it locked up my computer screen, so I had to have Fiscal come in and help out. And I was able to hear the Walton family and their discussion and other discussion that's been discussed so far. I have a screen that I want to share if I can find it here. Let's see, share screen. That's the ordinance. I'm trying to bring it up here. You see that? Anyway, I'll read, since you can't see it, I'll read what our ordinance currently says. It's 12/24/90, and it's called burial hours, Sundays and holidays. And then it says no graveside or interment will be allowed in a cemetery on Sunday or state, federal holiday, or any other holidays officially observed by the city, including Swiss days. On all other days, graveside service interments will be allowed between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. And then it goes into the time. All graveside services and interments must be arranged through the cemetery superintendent 48 hours in advance of time set, not including any intervening Saturday, Sunday, or holiday. So that's pretty much where the 48 hours comes. And if it goes into a Saturday, then it extends it out. And this ordinance was originally brought in from St. George City. They have the same requirement, except theirs, instead of saying weekends and holidays, it says 72 hours. And the reason that we do that is simply because we want to make sure that our people have time to do their paperwork and research in a safe manner without being hurried, so they don't make mistakes. We want to make sure that there's accuracy there. We have had problems in the past where burials have happened and some reason or another they didn't get in the right place. Also, it takes time to locate the plot physically, and that takes quite a bit of time. We have 3 sections in the cemetery. We have the historic section, we have the middle section, and we have the new section. And until we get a cemetery statistic or a work order from the cemetery, we don't have any information to actually start that. We actually got that particular work order from the mortuary at about 11:15. I was gone by then, but it was a meeting. But we actually got the official request at 11:17 on Thursday for the Saturday burial. At that time, before that, we didn't have the information to properly research and locate the burial rights and everything. But what that does, it gives us time to do the work order to make sure we get the right plot. And then once we turn it over to our people, the opening, then there's a lot involved in the opening. And a lot of times, I can give you an example of a recent burial we had with Shelby Fry. He was in the old section. We had to move 17 monuments and measure them all, figure out exactly where they're at just to get the vault truck in and get the vault truck out. That's an extreme situation. And after the burial, we had to put them all back exactly where they were. So that's one of the reasons that we have that. But until we get the work order from the cemetery, we don't know what we're looking at. So, can you hear me now? I'm sorry. Let me turn that up a little bit. So until we get the work order and we can verify that there's a burial right, that we know exactly what plot they're going in, sometimes families will have 3 or 4 different plots, or maybe some families have up to 40 plots in the old section, so we can locate the plot and she can cut the work order. Once she has the work order cut, our people go out. We have one crew that does everything in the parks department. They mow the grass, they trim the trees, they do all of that, and they also do the burials at the cemetery. So we don't have, like St. George, we don't have a crew that's set aside to do that. We're happy to do it and we're good at it, but we want to make sure we're accurate. So what we do, once they get the work order, they go out and they measure 2 times. And depending on what part of the cemetery is, it can either be easy or difficult. If you're in the historic section, it can be very difficult because the monuments aren't accurate. The measurements of the plots and areas are not exact. You've got 2 feet, 3 feet spacing between plots in some cases, and the measurements weren't accurate. The middle section's the same way. A lot of the markers there are inaccurate. So sometimes it takes us several hours to locate the plot. In the new section, it's a lot easier. We know where everything's at, it's marked, but we still measure it out and we double measure it and we double check it before we do anything. So once they've got it marked out, they paint the square on the ground and they bring in the sod cutter, they cut the sod, they roll it up. But also, part of this burial opening, and almost any burial, especially in the new section, the middle section, and especially the old section, there's an amount of time that we have to make sure there's room to get the dump truck in, to get the backhoe in, and also to get a vault truck in. So we have to make an avenue, you know, for all of those to get in. So a lot of times we'll have to move monuments. And like on Shelby's, we had to move 17, but on a normal burial, and I asked my Ryan, my cemetery foreman today, he says, on average, you know, when you do a burial like that, how many monuments do you move? You know, he says, oh, usually sometimes up to 4 on average. So that takes a lot of time. And it's, it takes a lot of time, but the thing with the burials, removing the monuments, is the monuments are extremely heavy. We have it in our ordinance where we can have people pay to have the monument company come out and move the monument. And if that's the case, you know, that's another reason for the 48 hours. But if we move them, I mean, we pick them up, we want to make sure some of these monuments are like, you've got the base, you've got a base plate, and then you've got the monument on top of that. They're extremely heavy. And they can weigh around a ton. And if they're moving multiple ones, if they get in a hurry, I mean, it's easy for an accident to happen. We want them to not feel rushed and have time to do that. And then once they do that, they open the plot. The plot can take, depending on if we have any problems, a lot of times, especially in the new section, we find a lot of debris in the ground. So sometimes we'll hit big sandstone. You know, we got a lot of red sandstone. Sometimes we'll hit barbed wire and things like that. We always like to allow at least four hours for the opening there. Once that opening's done and they get it all cleaned up, they have to close it, or in other words, make it safe until the burial. So, you know, they put the plywood over the boards and all of that. So that all takes a lot of time is the point I'm trying to make. And that's why we have the 48 hours. Before that, we were getting calls from the mortuary companies, you know, on Friday at 12 or 1 o'clock wanting to do a Saturday burial. And it just makes it extremely difficult to do a good job and be safe and accurate, you know, and protect our employees. So that's the reason we have that in our ordinance. And Ivans has the same thing in their ordinance. They're 48 hours. St. George has the same thing in there. They're 48 hours, except if there's a Saturday or a holiday involved. So we pretty much have copied St. George's ordinance. And I try to follow the ordinance the best I can, but sometimes until you get the information, you really don't know what you're looking at, you know, when you go to do an opening.
Brad, this is Wendell.
Hi, Wendell.
I got a question. When you have special circumstances, apparently like the Waltons had, is there a chance that we can look and see where this burial plot is? If it's in a new section, it probably wouldn't take as much time to take care of it because you've got the new section well mapped. If it's in the other two sections, I can understand the problem with the monuments and so forth. Is that a possibility? I'm not sure how many of the burials now are in the new section or in the older ones, but I would imagine most of them would be in the new section.
Most of them are actually in the middle section, unless it's if it's an unexpected death. A lot of those are in the new section, but usually the ones that are, you know, people die of natural causes at old age, they're in the middle of the old section. But that's a possibility, but we still need a reasonable amount of time to do the opening.
I understand.
And the mayor has
I've just got it, Brock. I'd like to look at the ordinance, because in listening to it, I don't think the 48 hours wasn't the question. It became the 72 hours where it came into question. And I again, you're right. Every city has a 40. Everything I researched and the calls I made were all 48 hours, even for Saturday burials. But in listening to what Brad read, and unless I heard it wrong, it sounds like that was the case, unless it fell on unless you're making the request on a Saturday or a Sunday or a holiday. And then you need 72 hours. I didn't see in the ordinance, because I don't think the request was made Thursday morning for a Saturday afternoon, which is well ahead of 48 hours. It just, I guess that was the question. Yeah, the 48 hours isn't the question. Obviously there's work, and I've learned a lot more about cemeteries over the last couple weeks than I thought I'd ever know, but they were told it needed to be 72 hours and couldn't be accommodated until Monday. But I guess if someone requested this on Wednesday morning, they could have a Friday burial, but if they request it Thursday morning, they can't do a Saturday burial, but in reading the ordinance and what you read, it didn't sound like that was making an exception for Saturday, but if the request was made on a Saturday, and maybe I just misunderstood, I don't have the ordinance in front of me. I'd love to see it.
If I could share it, I could figure out how to share it. I have it on my screen and I can read it to you. If my share
Do you want to
doesn't
read that one more time? Because again, you brought up the 48 hours. I don't think this was over the 48 hours. I think everybody was well understood that there's a 48 hour there. And that's exactly what St. George and Ivans and all of them have. They have there it is. They have the 48 hour request.
48 hours. I'm sorry.
Which is what they were well within. And I think where I think my concern came from, and this kind of falls with Wendell's question, is the family had scheduled to come up to see Grandpa, knowing that he wasn't doing well. Well, in that scheduling, Grandpa and had passed away on that Wednesday, and yet the family was still coming. And I just felt that, I mean, that was already scheduled. They were already coming. The funeral was, arranged and done. And because of the 72 hours, which is what was told, we couldn't accommodate that. So I guess that's where the question is. And that's where I figured it was because of our Friday work schedule that we needed 72 hours. So, but it doesn't sound like that's the case. Anyway, I guess that's the clarification we're just trying to understand.
Can I jump back in here for a second?
Sure.
And I'm looking at the St. George policy, and there's a difference between the St. George policy and the Santa Clara policy. And I think that probably accounts for the mortician's confusion, feeling like Thursday notification would be fine. Because I'm reading from the St. George City website, it says, all graveside services and interments must be arranged through the sexton 48 hours in advance of the time set. And if there is an intervening holiday or Sunday, arrangements must be made 72 hours in advance. So they don't exclude the Saturday from their 48 hours. And it appears to me that the Santa Clara ordinance does that. So if we had asked on a Thursday morning, which we did and this isn't St. George City and the ordinances are different, but I think that if we had asked the mortician on Thursday or on a Friday for a Saturday burial, he probably would have just told everyone in advance that's not possible. But it looks to me like the clear difference between Santa Clara's ordinance and St. George City's is that Santa Clara is including that is excluding Saturday and St. George isn't.
So Brad, if what's the latest I can call for a Saturday funeral? Does it have to happen by close of business on Wednesday, or can it happen Thursday for our own needs?
It could happen if they did it first thing in the morning on Thursday, but when I had 11 o'clock meeting, and when I left at 10:30, we didn't have the statistic from the McMillan Funeral Home. The number, they had called ahead of time, and they had given us a name And the name was actually described as, written down as Hensley, and we couldn't find that in our records. And the wife, when we did get the proper name, the wife's name didn't match the name of the burial that we were doing. So there's a little bit of confusion in there. I went to the 11 o'clock meeting and I came back and I asked for Ellen. She said it's all worked out. We're doing it Monday. To answer your question, let me go back a little bit of history on when we did this ordinance. I took the information out of the St. George ordinance and put it in our ordinance. And it had the 72 hours in there when I did my draft. I went and looked at it today. And when we reviewed it at City Council, and Matt was there, and I think he changed the wording. It's supposed to be the same, from what I understood, as St. George's, but he changed the wording on that for 72 hours, I guess, because, you know, on a weekend it's longer. So he's tried to get it to say the same thing from what I understood. We have in the past, I mean, there was a situation where we have done it in less time, but unless we have the information, you know, up front from the mortuary where we can call it, make a decision, it's really hard to make that call. And this one would have probably been one that we could have done on a shorter notice. But there's not really any room in the ordinance.
My question, again, I'm still confused, is because I was told it was 72 hours for and yet I don't see in the ordinance, is it 48 for a Saturday burial or is it 72? Because I was told that day that we needed 72 hours.
48 unless there's a Saturday or a holiday involved. So it's like
the ordinance says that if there's a Saturday involved or if it's scheduled on a Saturday. It was up and it got pulled down.
I tried to share the screen. I had Christelle in here trying to share the screen, but I'll read that specific. It says not including any intervening Saturday, Sunday, or holiday. Not including any. In other words, the 48 hours doesn't include intervening Saturday. And I understood that to be 48 hours actual during the weekday, like Monday through Friday.
I say something from a more emotional standpoint.
Yeah.
When your loved one dies, you're not thinking of the cemetery. And so the day of the day of the death, that is not what you're thinking about. And it's not until the next day when you meet with the mortician. And that should factor into how the city works with families who are dealing with a loss. When we met with the mortician at 10 o'clock on Thursday morning and he called and said 48 hours, I thought, great, 48 hours. We're not doing it till 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon. It seemed reasonable to me.
And I think that's the question. Just, I think as I've looked at the other ordinances, that's the way I've read it, all the other cities. And then I've spoken with 2 funeral homes as well. And that's the way they've done it with other cities as well. So that was really the point of the discussion is, and you're right. It's I haven't been in those shoes. Certainly, I think as a city, that's why I'd like to review it and just try to see if we can't find the best way to work on this. And like I said, I just, but it does sound like the way the ordinance is written, we're different than these other cities.
Let's get the ordinance in front of us. Let's go through and read some of that. And if the other cities allow 48 hours from the time of the call, then we should be able to make that work. We may have to add an exception unless it's in the old part of the cemetery where they need additional time to do monuments or something like that. But I think we can make an effort to to try and make that 48-hour rule work similar to the other cities. And it seemed to me that's what it said. I think there's just maybe one extra word in there that's causing some confusion. I want to get it in front of us where we can all read exactly what it says and make a tweak. If it needs to be adjusted, let's make an adjustment. I feel for the families. I also feel for the staff. And, there's some responsibility on the end of the mortuary too, to make sure that the work order comes over here correct, with the right names and stuff on it. And they need a little bit of time to understand that as well. So I think we can look at it, John, Christine, and make some tweaks to that to try and make it, as convenient as we can for the families and the people that have loved ones lost.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your patience and working with us. We'll see if we can make some tweaks to that ordinance and probably run it by you before we bring it back to council for the change.
Very good. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys. Sorry, I have to flip back and forth on the item to get back to the agenda. Item 282 is water district rate increase discussion. Jack or Brock?
I got that. So we received notice. Here, I'm going to share my screen as well. We received notice from the Washington County Water Conservancy District that they are again this year intending to raise the wholesale purchase rate of water from the district by 10 cents per 1,000 gallon. Now they've done this this will be about the 4th year in a row that they've done a 10-cent increase. Back the first year they did it, we made an adjustment. It's when we chose to reduce the amount of gallons given with the base rate. We created the lowest tier, which we felt like would cover us for a number of years. So we haven't done a rate increase the last 2 years when they've increased their rate by 10 cents. We feel this time with our growth, and a couple of years ago we also had one of our wells go down, which meant we became more reliant on purchasing water from the district. And so in discussion with Jack, we feel with our growth and our need to purchase water from the district is becoming, we have to do that more often than we used to. And the potential of a well or both wells going down, we need to make sure we have our rates in place to be able to cover that cost. So we want to have a discussion on this that we would bring back to council for approval, but a discussion of raising our rates, passing through this 10-cent increase onto our residential and commercial water rates by adding 10 cents onto each tier of our water rates.
Has the district said why they're continually increasing the rate? Do we have representation on the board?
No. Well, we've got the elected officials that are on the board. None of the elected officials are from Santa Clara. Mayor Hart is on there, and Mayor Pike, Mayor Nielsen.
Are they having an increase in the cost of water that they're producing? Is that why we're seeing an increase?
It's tied to the Lake Powell pipeline. They implemented it a number of years ago to start stepping the rates 10 cents a year to help fund the Lake Powell pipeline project.
And so if the Lake Powell pipeline doesn't go through, they'll refund that money?
You betcha.
And
I got a question.
Most municipalities have been increasing their rates. They've just been passing this right on through each year by 10 cents on their rates is what most municipalities have been doing each year.
Brock, this year is a very interesting situation. You've been cutting your budget. Why aren't they?
I can't speak for them.
I think we ought to ask that question.
The public hearing starts in 25 minutes. If you hurry, you can get there.
That just doesn't make sense to me.
Is the public hearing is it a live meeting or is it a Zoom meeting?
It is.
I'd say it's live.
It's live at the Water District office.
The meeting I was in a meeting, and the comment, and I'm going to paraphrase, was by increasing costs, it will encourage conservation. And we had a very spirited discussion on that, and for that, saying, look, if we don't need to increase the costs, we can. I think Southern Utah has done a very good job conserving, but
The best in the state.
there are groups out there that believe simply by driving power and water costs up, it will force conservation. And the sad thing is, at the end of the day, the people that can afford the power are fine. It hurts the lower class. It hurts those that struggle to pay the power and water. And it's the ones we're trying to protect. So again, I'm all for it if it's justified, but I get concerned in those meetings when that was brought up on this exact thing. I think, and it probably was a year ago when they were looking at it then. So
I don't like the idea of catering to special interest groups. They always seem to have an agenda, and I don't like that idea at all.
If you guys recall, the Water District is set up kind of a three-headed approach to fund the Lake Powell Pipeline project. One is to increase rates, one is to increase impact fees, the other is to increase taxes. And they balance those increases between the three, trying to not hurt one sector any more than necessary. If they don't raise the rates, then they have to make up the money by increasing the property tax levy or by increasing the impact fees. The impact fees go up, what is it, $1,000 a year, Ben?
Gosh.
yeah, they're over 10,000 now, and 10,400, and they're going to 16,000 at $1,000 a year.
So they put a big chunk of the burden on new growth, pay for the project.
So is this money that this constant increase, is it being pooled, or are they using it?
That's my understanding, is that it's either being spent on the remaining water development that they're doing here, like the new reservoir at Anderson Junction. And they do have several projects that are ongoing right now, not part of the Lake Powell Pipeline. But the biggest project for sure coming up to maintain the water source and supply is the Lake Powell Pipeline. So my understanding is they are building a pool. I think it shows in their audit that fund is consistently growing to help pay that project off, as well as paying the costs that they're incurring now with the engineering and design studies. Yeah, it seemed like it had a period to it, like 10 cents a year for 8 years or 10 years or something like that, similar to what the impact fees were doing. So, I mean, we can get some more information from them. We can call Zach in front of the council and have him justify it right there. We're just looking to council to see what you want to do. We didn't implement it last year. We absorbed it. So we didn't pass it along. We absorbed it within our normal rate schedule. Jack is hesitant to do that a second year. But that's up to you, council.
Well, and I don't like absorbing it either. If we're getting charged for it, it's I think in listening to everybody, I think it's just, if the concern, and I agree, I don't think all the Lake Powell Pipeline burden should fall on strictly impact fees. I think they need to look at these, and I think the state needs to look, in funding a portion of this as well, because at the end of the day, Southern Utah does have a huge economic impact on the state financially, for the good.
Speak right.
But I do feel if this is me personally, that, we've absorbed it last year. If there is an increase that comes from them, we probably need to pass that along. My question would be though, how much water do we buy from them if, for each resident, because we have our own wells, what percentage of our total water actually comes from the Conservancy district?
And I can answer some of that, and I think
Get right up next to your mic.
Brock's got some of those numbers, but one thing you have to remember is we get about 830 gallons a minute out of well number 6. And then if you guys remember right, well number 7, we used to get just about the same amount. And we kept raising it up, trying to get an area in the well that we wouldn't pull sand. And we finally, we spent almost $100,000, maybe more than that, trying to do that. And we raised it up to where now we cut down on the amount that we're pulling to 500 gallons a minute. And so we've lost that other 300 gallons a minute. And so we're actually buying that from the Conservancy district because we're not pulling it out. So we're short compared to what we used to have. And then if we do happen to lose one, then, we're buying more from the county and from the Water Conservancy district. So I know Brock's got some numbers. Was it 2 years ago, Brock, that we lost well number 7, and we bought, you got that number, Brock?
I don't have them with me. I'm trying to understand the charts that were given to me to read them, to understand them correctly. And I was struggling with that today, so.
Okay, we can get you that number then, but if I remember right, it was about 80,000. It was about $80,000, Brock.
On replacing well 7?
No, just on the water that we purchased because our well was down.
I'd hate to commit, but I know it was a significant amount.
We can get that number and give you the percentage. But the issue is we're getting to the point where we're buying more and more water from them all the time because of our growth. We don't have, our wells don't produce enough to cover our peaks, and the more growth we get, the more we're going to continue to drop into that more expensive water. So we produce it for about 35 cents a thousand, it depends on the year. If we lose a well and we have to pull it, put it back in. But, we're paying quite a bit more from that from the district. So we need to protect ourselves. If they go down, then we're paying 100% of that. But every year, as we get more growth, we're buying more and more from the services.
Well, I appreciate that. The reason I asked that is, where we skipped last year and not doing the increase, we do produce our own. And so it's probably not, it's not going to be an equal match of what we produce, what we need to buy. And so again, in listening to you, Jack, it sounds like you're feeling like we need to increase. We need to cover some of the costs, to just in case we can't produce or the well goes down or things like that. Is that correct?
Yes. I just look at some numbers here real quick.
Well, and while you're looking up numbers, how healthy the water fund is, because last time we looked at it, it seemed like we were doing just fine, even without these increases. And so I understand as well that we need to protect ourselves, but I've always hoped that this could be not like the other cities, because we're not like the other cities in how we get our water. If we were getting 100% from the water district, then yeah, you just pass it on. But I've been a little upset at St. George that they did that, because I knew that they have their own wells too up in Snow Canyon, and so they're just kind of taking the easy route, I feel like. And we could do a little more homework and maybe increase it 7 cents, or maybe just certain bands, different groupings of the gallons get the increase so that it's more actually what we're charging people, what we're actually paying.
Yeah, Jared, the water fund is doing well. The concern long-term is making sure that we have funds in place for renewal and replacement. If we don't, that renewal and placement it gets more expensive each year. And we actually the last year when we did our rate adjustment was 2017. So we didn't do an adjustment in 2018 or 2019. So we actually took 2 years of absorbing the rate increase from the district. So yeah, the water fund is in pretty good shape, but we want to make sure that it stays there and not continue to bleed it to when we do have an issue of needing to replace some infrastructure, that hopefully we have funds in place to do that.
In 2018-19, we pulled over 28 million gallons from the district.
Well, we can't, I mean, as a city, we can't afford to absorb the rate increases if we're using a considerable amount of the Water Conservancy District water for very long, or it will start affecting that fund. So what Jarrett was talking about is absolutely true. If we knew kind of the ratios of what we're getting from the district, and I reflect back to when they forced us to take water anyway, regardless of whether we were using our wells or not. To me, if this is a justifiable increase, I think we've got to pass it on, or we're going to have a water fund that's going to be depleted.
I tend to agree with that, but it's been 2 years that we've absorbed it. I think we probably need to increase the rates a little bit and put it out there, and we can do a little bit of checking to see if it's a full dime or we want to back it off to 7 or 8 cents.
Rick, it looks to me like we're pulling about, if our wells are running, we have no problems. I mean, in 2018-19, we're pulling almost 20% from the county.
Did you say about 20%, Jack?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, that's significant over a time period.
If we lose a well,
then it's even higher.
Yeah, if we lose a well, it would go higher. For instance, in those same year periods, in well number 6, we produced 431 million gallons. Well number 7, we produced 101 million gallons. So if one of those goes down, you're paying that full fee. That's what really hurts us. That's what hurt us last year.
Yeah, that is significant.
So you need to, even though we're only pulling 28%, that's going to continue to rise. We've got to protect ourselves for if the well goes down and for the future growth.
The one thing we do have is, as we get more of this irrigation throughout the city, that should help in some of those bigger, in our parks and some of our bigger landscape areas, won't it?
Well, all that does is increase our culinary flow. It doesn't. The problem with the reuse water is they're still planning on building the big reservoir over in Warner Valley, and you're still going to be charged a fee to distribute that. So it's significantly less, but it's also, that's one of the reasons why we need to look into our sewer agreement with the regional sewer line to see if we get water back without having to pay for it.
Yeah, there's new people in charge now. Maybe we can make a little headway about that. I know what the answer used to be.
Yeah, and I'll say on this particular,
You want to bring this back to the 10-cent increase? You want us to do a little bit more homework on it and then make a recommendation for something less?
what I was going to say is I could justify just doing the 10 cents right now because this is the third year. So basically it's what, a 30%, like we're using 25, 20, 30% from the water district. So I could justify right now doing the full 10 cents because we've held off for 2 other years. Like we're basically, we are blending the rate basically with holding it off.
And when we do increase it, we explain that to them. That the city's been absorbing the increase for the last 2 years.
I would agree with that.
Any other comments?
I think we ought to do what Jarrett said, explain it. But I think we ought to take the increase now, but we ought to think next year, maybe we don't take the increase. The year after that, maybe we don't take the increase. I think we ought to look at it each year.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what we've been doing, is looking at it, and if we feel good about it, we'll absorb it. And if we think we need it, we'll implement it. So, okay, I'll have them bring that one back to council for your approval. Okay, item 283, discussion regarding parking on Heights Drive next to City Hall and Solar Project. I know Herb sent an email out to council, had some photos and had some concerns there. He sent me a text right before the meeting saying he was at Fish Lake fishing, wouldn't be on the phone call tonight. I know Jarrett wanted to talk about it, kind of from my side of things. I think one of the parking issues we got over there now is just due to the construction on the project. The contractors can't get their trailers and stuff on site, so they park on Heights Drive, which is the closest place to the site that they can park. And I'd like to see the construction get finished to determine, before we made a decision about changing anything on Heights Drive. One concern that I do have is if you cut the parking on Heights Drive, you're going to move it to Vineyard. And so now you'll have the same issue down Vineyard Drive, which is farther away from Santa Clara Drive. So it may make that a little bit safer, but now Vineyard isn't fully improved, not full width. So now you're going to pass a safety concern on the Vineyard where you probably get more kids than you've got on Heights Drive. So, but council, what are your thoughts on it?
I was just hoping that we could kind of talk about like how wide the road is compared to other roads and where it's so short, how that affects things. So maybe Jack, I mean, is there technically supposed to be room for cars parked on both sides and 2 cars going down, coming at a pretty good speed off of Santa Clara Drive? Like, are we within our specs that we shouldn't really close anything on either side?
Well, the road is, and I don't have the exact measurement on that road, but yeah, it's awful tight. If you put a car on each side and then try to go through it, you can still get a car through there, but there's no way you're going to get 2 cars to pass each other with the car on each side. It's not like, I don't know, I'd have to go out and measure it, but.
Isn't it 35 feet? Isn't it a standard 50-foot section? No, it was in before we modified the section.
I want to say it is, but
you have 35 feet of pavement.
35 feet of pavement. When you get 2 cars on each side, still pretty.
Yeah, now you're down to 15 feet past cars. I mean, it's that way to keep the speed down, but since you're leaving I think the problem is they're leaving Santa Clara Drive at a higher speed.
You know, one suggestion, we could talk to the developer and maybe we could offer some of our parking in our city office here, where maybe they could just pull their cars over here and park here instead of being right on the road. They can't park in the project. That would help. You know, until they get done.
Yeah, the asphalt section on Vineyard's even smaller. It's 23 feet or so is all you've got on Vineyard. So you don't want to move the parking down there.
I was thinking the parking.
Yeah, I mean, you could open up the parking. I hate to make that a practice, just because these are contractors with trailers. They're gonna suck up 4 or 5 parking stalls at whack. So I'd love to put some pressure on Kohler to get this stupid project built. They've been in construction forever. It'd be nice if they would get it built, or at least to the point that they could park at the site. But I do understand it takes some time to get construction and stuff, and stuff going out there. And maybe we can limit some of the parking as it approaches the radiuses on Santa Clara Drive, to where you have good visibility as you come off the road. So you're not blocking that visibility right there. I think that's one of the issues, one of the safety issues that are brought up.
Would it help in construction, just asking if they can limit the parking to one side of the street?
I mean, you can ask. I don't know if we can enforce it.
Yeah.
Because it is a public street with parking allowed on both sides, unless we want to close parking on one side. And you probably close parking on the city hall side, but that doesn't help your safety concerns on the frontage with their driveway and stuff. So you got more parking on the city hall side.
That's the side I would think you'd want to park them on, just because they're coming off the parkway. And
but I noticed tonight that the Heights Drive frontage against Sue Gates' house has 2 of the Sue Gates kids parking. So if you close it on that side, now you're impacting that neighbor even more than they're being impacted by the project. So you could close parking in front of the project itself, allow them to keep parking on the west side of Heights Drive, and tell them they can park in the city lot if it's full. See if they'd use it during construction. You know, that may be something we could do. I probably wouldn't recommend doing it more than that, just because it's going to be hard to enforce, and you're going to pass the impact directly down the vineyard. They can't park on Santa Clara Drive.
We could park down Vineyard in front of Herb's place.
Yeah. You know, or in front of Town Hall at Vineyard wouldn't be bad on the Vineyard side. But as you go east on Vineyard, you're gonna have a full width improvements in 2 lots, I think. So you don't want to, and those both got double driveways, if I remember it. So there's not a lot of parking in Vineyard without blocking driveways. I haven't heard this from the residents. Have you guys heard anything from any other residents other than just the email that Herb sent?
I haven't had any complaints that I've known.
Do they have visitor spaces within the project?
Yeah, they have parking. The project gave them a reduction in parking because it was a B&B and not a residential project. But they do have on-site parking. It's just none of it's built yet. And that's where they're using for the material storage right now during the construction, is the on-site parking areas.
Do we have any indication on how much longer it might take to complete the project?
We do not.
Is Corey still on the call?
I am.
Give us an update, Corey.
The update is that the architect wants to build something very unique. And so it's slowing down it's slowed down the construction project considerably because it's not standard construction. He wants to do, make those buildings look historical on the outside and in the inside. So I'm more than happy to talk to them and encourage them to park on site. But I don't have a date when they would be finished.
Corey, why don't you ask him for a completion date? A realistic one? Let's see if we can get him on the record. And I know how hard that is, given this individual.
The good news about going slow is you don't have a lot of parking. You don't have a lot of vehicles there. So
That would be all the more reason they should be able to park on site.
I am excited to see how they look. It's kind of cool what he's doing there.
I do believe that the city should maybe put no parking there for a certain period or a certain area there off of Vineyard or off of Santa Clara Drive so that people don't park real close to the intersection.
Yeah, I saw a couple bikers going down and there was a truck parked on Santa Clara Drive there. This was just today, and those bikes to get around the vehicle, if they're parked out there, literally have to come out into the roadway. So it does create some problems there.
Let's talk to him, Corey, see what he can do. And we may let him know we may close parking, his on-street parking on his frontage, or at least limit it to improve safety concerns. Let's see what he says.
I'll get right on it.
Any other comments, council? Item 284, public safety tier 2 retirement discussion that you brought.
That's me. All right, so coming forward in this next year, legislation over the last number of years has been working on adjusting the tier 2 public safety retirement. It's been a big discussion for, like I say, for a number of years. They've chosen in the legislature to adjust the tier 2. Tier 2 came about back during the downturn of the economy, and it went into effect July 1st, 2011. All employees hired after that date are in the tier 2 retirement of the Utah retirement system. And in that tier 2 retirement system, there's 2 funds that when they're hired, they have, I believe, 1 year to determine which plan of tier 2 they want to be in. There's a hybrid system and a defined contribution plan. In the hybrid retirement system, part of your retirement goes into a pension and part of it goes to a 401k. There is an employer cap to how much the employer contributes to that retirement. And if the retirement contribution rate goes above that employer cap, the employee is then required to pay that increase. As it states here, if the pension contribution rate ever exceeds 10%, you must pay the additional amount. Now that pension contribution rate has increased over the years. That has increased. So employees haven't been asked at this time up until this year to contribute. On the 401k side, you get what the contribution rate is and that's it. You never would have to come out of pocket. Well, in the revamping of the tier 2, they have chosen to increase, as here's our current benefit here. The current benefit at that time was 10%. It's now at 12.08%. What they decided to do is increase the employer benefit amount. So the amount the employer is required to contribute to 14.08, so a 2% increase. But the actual full rate is 16.35%, which leaves 2.27% for that hybrid plan to come from the employees. So they would be required to fund that. But in the 2020 legislature, they decided to give an option to cities to pick up and pay that additional 2.27 that the employee is supposed to pay. So we have an option of that 2.27, we can pick up that cost for the employee. If you pick it up for the hybrid option, you also have to do it for the 401k. So where you would only have been paying 14.08% on the 401k, you then have to give them the additional 2.27. So their actual rate goes to the 16.35. So you can't, if you do want to do for the hybrid, you have to do it for the 401k as well. This option it runs actually a little bit like a Roth IRA. It comes out after tax. So it's a little bit different than the normal retirement, but there is an option for us to pick it up if we want to. So the total cost of the adjustment in the retirement system going up from the 12.08 to actually the 16.35 would be just under $12,000. To pick up the 2.27% is about $6,300. But to do that, we have to pass a resolution and also fill out a paperwork. Here, as I think I included here, this employer election to pick up member contributions of the Tier 2 public safety and firefighter. And then, as I said, also pass a resolution. So I bring this to you tonight as a discussion to, if the council would like to pick up that 2.27% of the retirement for those in the Tier 2 public safety. And as I said, I've met with those that are in the Tier 2. I've met with them and let them know that it's a possibility, as well as of right now, that they are required to pay the 2.27%. That was their decision that they made when they chose the plan they chose, that they should have known that was a possibility. I mean, I know when they made this adjustment to Tier 2, I remember reading the policy, and I know in my head I said I would pick the 401k because I don't want to ever have to come out of pocket, because I figured at that time the way the retirement rates were increasing then, I figured it would have happened before now, but that's what went through my head, as I said, when 2010, when this happened. But so they're aware of it, but it's up to council if we would like to pick it up and not have them come out of pocket, or leave it as is and based on the plan that was chosen.
Is it going to make it easier to retain employees? Are the other cities picking it up, or are they allowing the employee to do it rather than the city?
Based on the information I've seen that has been gathered from the surveys that have gone out, I would say it's about 60% have stated, it might be a little more, about 60% to 70% have said they're going to pick it up. There's, out of that remaining maybe 30-40%, majority of them are on a to be determined. They haven't decided yet, as when that survey was done. There's only probably been a handful that have said, no, we are not picking it up.
So we're looking at about a $20,000 hit in the budget if we do that. Six on one and 12 on the other?
No. It total, you're going to have, it's just under 12,000 total. The 6,300 is picking up the 2.27%. The other 50, like $800, $5,900 is just going, what we have to do to go from the 12.08% to the 14.08. So the 6,300 is what would be a additional cost to the budget that we wouldn't have if it's left to the employee to pick up.
Brock, I have a question. So is this only for public safety and firefighters, and it's not for all public employees?
That is correct. This is just a change to the Tier 2 of public safety and firefighters.
Do you expect to see the legislature do anything with the remainder of the public employees similar to this?
I do. But I have that my crystal ball is not real clear, but I believe that since they've done this, I can see there being a real push by the general other side, tier 2, a public employee saying, hey, you made the adjustment for the public safety. Now you need to do it for the regulars, the other side of the public employees. And I don't know if this, the resolution that I've read, that if this, you can do a resolution to where this would be, if you chose to pick it up, you could say of an amount not to exceed 2.27, to where if this rate goes up, because it's possible, this rate could climb, and next year it could be 4% or 3%, that you could do the resolution that not to exceed, and where you pick it up and then say anything above that, then you are the employee would be required to pay that amount.
So real quick, based on what's there right now, the employee benefits at 12%. So 12% of their salary is what goes annually into the state retirement plan. Is that correct?
Currently for the tier 2, yes, public safety is 12.08%.
So at a $50,000 employee, they're putting $6,000 a year into that. So right now it goes to 14, but it's really, so I guess my concern on this,
the employer portion goes to 14, but the actual rate is 16.35.
Yeah.
And that's all being paid by the employer. It's not like a matching program.
No.
It's a straight employer pays.
Correct.
It's a traditional pension plan, right? I mean, the employer's paying that money.
The tier 2, the hybrid option is a split. There is pension and 401k. It's a, if I pull back up here, back in 2010 when it was done, as it said, a portion, 8.22% went to the pension and 1.78% went to a 401k. So the hybrid has a pension and 401k option, whereas the defined contribution was all 401k. There was no pension.
But it's all 100% paid by the employer.
Correct.
So it's not the 401k like everybody else gets, where they'll match 2 or 3, 4% what you put in.
Yes.
This is all paid by the employer.
Yeah.
And that's my concern is there's already because we've got this, but it's an employee match. And I'm inclined to say if the employees made a choice to choose the one where they're required to come out of pocket, the city's already paying based at the 12, it went from 10 to 12. It's basically $1,000 a year at a $50,000. I don't know what exactly. I'm going off $50,000 a year. So go from 12, basically for every 2%, you're adding $1,000 into the retirement. I would be inclined to say I don't know if the city should be on the hook for if someone chose to say, well, I want the benefit of the 16%, which frankly, I wouldn't be, if I'm looking at this, you probably would take that, even if I've got to pay 2% out of pocket, which is going to be, an extra $1,000 a year. But outside of government in business, that's normal. That's our guys, we do a company match, we'll match up to 3% or whatever they put in, which is just normal. So I don't feel, if the option was there and they could have gone either way, I don't feel that it's the city's responsibility to say, well, we'll just pick it up on that. And that's just my 2 cents on it, because it's still it's a very good retirement increase, what we're looking at.
I actually agree with what Ben said. And I also think that in addition to that it would be hard to justify doing that with the employees who chose to do the other plan, because they consciously made that choice knowing that they were going to get something different and didn't ever have to be on the hook, like you said, Brock, to put anything additional into it.
I'm actually surprised a little bit the state's increasing it at such a high amount. And I'm going to say this, try to say, I think pensions and government pensions are, and you look at some of these states where financially they're in deficits, pensions are the big driver of that. And when you throw a 6% increase over, because it's not just the percentage, wages are already going up. You know, a person that was making, you know, $30,000 20 years ago is making double that. I don't know if it's double, but so those percentages are based off that increase. So there's already an increase going into that pension plan just because of the wages. And then you increase that now by I don't know when it was 10%. It looks like it wasn't too many years ago. You know, in 10 years, we've increased that by, we've taken that number, increased it by 60%, going from 10% to 16%. I do get concerned. That is going to be the crux on states when those pensions and the money's coming in can't afford the money's going out. And I think if I'm an employee or an employer, I would totally recommend to an employee to do the 16% and put everything you could away. I just don't feel it should fall onto the taxpayers to cover that difference.
Yeah, and I would just add that we put a freeze on all pay raises this year. This is a pay raise, right? So we have to have an exception to the budget rule we just created to go ahead and cover this. So I agree with Lena and Ben that we don't pick it up.
Danny, your window? Did you two want to offer any input, Danny or Linda?
I don't know if I see Denny. You saw Denny on there?
Yeah, isn't that him right there? He's muted.
Oh, Denny's there, but Wendell looks like we lost.
You're muted, Danny.
Unmute. Hold on, Danny. I'm trying to get you unmuted. Unmute.
If your wife finds out you can do this, Danny, she's going to figure out a way to mute you.
Why will not allowing me to unmute him?
How's that? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
I think everybody has stated pretty much the feeling of a conservative person. I mean, we've all been in the private sector. We've all had 401ks and we've all been contributors to those. And that was basically the idea. The only caveat I have that concerns me is that these tier 2 or your public safety people that are putting their life on the line, they're a little bit different in what they do versus the everyday employee. But we are already contributing a considerable amount to them. And so in my mind, I would think we'd leave it alone and let it proceed the way we've talked about with the employee who had chose that route anyway to be the participant.
That's fine. I appreciate that. And I don't, if it comes back next year or something changes, I'm sure that option will come back if it ever changes. And like I said, I think on the resolution too, I know you stated, if you ever felt like there was a portion that you wanted to, I believe you can choose how much up to that 2.27. I guess you could do less, I believe, if you wanted to, if there's ever in the future, we decide that's an option.
You can implement if you want to anytime, right?
I would think so. I know this year, but I don't know if it, based on the legislature's given us the option this year, but I don't know if it's an ongoing every year. You can choose. How I understood it, it's this year to choose, but it might be an option going forward, year in or year out, I would. So.
All righty, staff reports. Randy, you want to go first? We just picked on you, so.
Yeah,
You talking to me?
I'll go first. So we've been busy recently. Last night we had a fire out at the Anasazi Valley area. It was about 2 to 3 acre fire that started last night, 2 a.m. and we finished up about 6 o'clock this morning. And then we sent our wildland crew once they came on this morning out there to mop up the hot spots and monitor it. And they also had some training going on today, so they were busy today with that. Then later this afternoon, we ended up having a single room and contents structure fire over here in Ivins. It was contained to the bathroom of a single family residence, so it didn't spread any further than that. And then shortly after that, we had a cardiac arrest out on Highway 91. And so we've had a very eventful, busy day. And just recently, the crew went out on a childbirth call. So we're busy. It's a busy time of year. Things are picking up for us. People are getting out, camping and getting out in nature and things. So we've had a fire that we've helped out with the past 3 weekends. And those are usually on Saturday and Sunday when people are out. Other than that, we're staying real busy. Summer season's upon us. It's drying up out there. The county is into fire restrictions, which means no fires outside of a designated fire ring. No fires allowed in any unincorporated areas in the county. And yeah, it's been busy. Any questions or anything?
Brad.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I got a new camera on my desktop computer up here, and I tested everything before we started tonight, and as soon as the meeting started, the computer started freezing up and I lost my audio, so my apologies. Estelle helped me, and I'm on my office phone right now, so anyway, my apologies for that. Lava flow trails moving along pretty well. They are ready for curb on the Rachel side from Harmon's and across the wash. They tell me they'll be putting road base down and pavement most likely next week. Swiss Pioneer Park, we're working on the finishing touches on that. I'm still waiting for the playground. They're telling me it'll be here around June 15th and the cover, the shade cover that goes with that. I've got benches on order and a few other things, but moving along pretty good. The COVID-19 epidemic has slowed down orders quite a bit on things I've been trying to get in, but I'm pretty sure it'll be complete by July 1st. I've been working on an estimate for paving Canyon View Park, paving the area down the road by the pickleball courts, and then also some work on Little League Park and also the parking area down below. And I'll be bringing that to council probably next meeting if there's time or space on the meeting agenda. Really, that's all I've got. Things are going pretty well. Yeah, any questions for me?
I have a question, but I'm not sure if it's for you or Jack. Did we
Okay.
ever come to a resolution on the one-way access over at Goober?
Yeah, I've been working on that. I actually have a huge do not enter sign going on the one way where it comes off of Tuscany Drive, and a no right sign. So I'm increasing the signage up there, hoping that'll help.
Yeah, we installed a couple additional signs, and we had straight stripe striping, paint, few arrows, and a big one way going in. So there's been a few things done to help create signage and awareness to how traffic's supposed to flow there.
Have you had any more concerns or comments from the neighbors?
I have not had an email from Miss Evans regarding that. The only email I got from her is about a palm tree in the park that needs trimming.
Okay.
Other questions for Brad, council? Okay, Jack.
Okay, I don't know if any of you have been down to see our bridge. It's pretty much completed. Lights are up. Dustin completed the trail that goes along the river up to the bridge, and so that's been completed. People can actually get on the trail and get all the way over the bridge. Then we also added road base on the end of all the corners so that people can get on and off the sidewalk, even where it doesn't, run into asphalt. We've also put water on each side of the bridge. On the south side, they installed the water box, water meter for Brad so that he can get his landscaping in. And then also the water and everything is there to do the landscaping along their own subdivision along the trail so they can get that done. That's all ready to go. And then also going up Chapel Street up toward the Hafen home. That's all ready now and can be landscaped. Also, we're working on our 69 kV line. I don't know if you've noticed the big trucks out there on electric, and our crews have been working together. We actually borrowed Hurricane's 90-foot bucket truck and had it over here for 3 or 4 days. That was very nice of them to let us use that. And I suspect by the end of the week, we'll be pretty close to being wrapped up if nothing happens. We have any power outages or something like that, but it's going really well. I feel really good about that. That way, if we have a circuit go bad on Gates Lane, we've got a way to backfeed that development over in the hills. Also, if you haven't been down on Arrowhead by the elementary school, the guys have got that curb and sidewalk all in, and their driveways are completed, and it's also asphalted. It really made a big difference. You guys ought to go down there and look at it. It'll be great for school when they start this year. It'll be a lot safer. It looks so nice, and we really got some nice compliments from residents there. Also, Elaine, I just wanted to let you know that we've ordered the air brake sign for the top of Santa Clara Drive, to no air brakes as they come down that hill. So we haven't forgot about you.
Thank you.
You bet. Other than that, just normal maintenance we're doing in the city.
Hey, Jack, question. The Hills Phase 3, those big rock trucks, have you seen what it's doing to the road?
Yes. We've met with, oh gosh, Feller. And Feller said that he would repair that when they're done.
Oh, well, that's good. I mean, I don't know if they're running overweight or if it's just because of the weight on the road and we didn't have it built strong enough to carry that weight, but it really was taking its toll.
It's taking its toll, and some of it's, it's only 2.5 inches. So, that many trucks, that much weight, it is doing some damage. It's a perfect example of not having curb and sidewalk along the edge of the road. You know, that's what happens when it starts to break off the edge, and then it just continues to alligator and sink. You get moisture under it because you don't have anywhere for the water to go along the edge.
Have we got any restrictions on the rock trucks in the community? I thought we, at one point, they traveled either on Santa Clara Drive or Pioneer Parkway when they were leaving the area, but I've had a couple of the big rock trucks traveling down Red Mountain and also on Canyon View, and I didn't know if our roads are equal to the task for those.
Yeah, I don't know about those, but we definitely got a lot of them coming out of the hills. I had no idea there was that much that would take off. That's a lot of dirt, and now they've got all this rock that they've got to get rid of. I talked to Alan Rosenberg to see if they take the rock that they've got and stack it on those hillsides that you can see. It's kind of an eyesore. If they put that rock and place it on the hills, on those slopes, it would, help, help it from runoff and sloughing off there. So they said they might do that, but he has an idea to sell all that rock. So we're not only getting rid of the dirt, but all this rock, and they're going to get more when they put the sewer. And one of my concerns is that they leave enough dirt there when they put all these concrete walls in on each one of those lots that they've got enough fill to fill those walls on the back of the lots, and they don't have to haul more fill in. That'd be terrible. So I brought that up to them. So hopefully they know what they're doing. That's.
Other questions for Jack, council?
I just have a kudos. So I went and drove the bridge the other day, and I didn't remember in the plans there being a parking area on the south side. It was just super nice to pull off and park and go for a nice little stroll, and just kudos. I don't know who put that in the plans, but it turned out super nice.
And we've got room for a gazebo to go there next to it too. So.
Yeah, we need to get that striped. We'll get that done too for parking there. And the next thing we got to do is get the fence up for Mr. Williams there. He called me the other day and he's getting a lot of trespassers, he says. So anyway, we'll get that done here probably next week.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Corey?
So sorry about the look of this dotted line, but that's just the way the sun shines on my office. New home permits. You should all have a building report in your Dropbox. Looks like we're at 68 homes. I got one in plan review. We got a couple months to go, so it looks like we might hit 80. Let's see, commercial wise, Dollar Tree plans are probably going to be submitted around June 21st. I had several comment or phone calls on their design, and that's what they're telling me. Also, Harmon's a tag and go is in the process. That would go at the Pioneer entry, that first pad right there facing Pioneer. Jim's RV, just to update you, he requested a CO and told him no, he's not going to get a CO until everything on his site plan's installed. So he's got some landscaping. They finally come out with they finally settled on a color on that rear wall. I see that the landscape has started today. They're going to be putting the columns on the front to break up the metal building look. They told him he needed his fencing in and the slats in the fencing, that everything that was on his site plan needed to be completed. It's looking good with the parking lot. The Planning Commission agenda will be going out tomorrow. What we have scheduled on there is 3 public hearings. The first one is for the FEMA landslide mitigation project parcels that were left R110. They'll be changed to open space, or that recommendation will go to Planning Commission and forward on to you for that zone change. Also a public hearing for assisted living down at Gates Lane and Santa Clara Drive, Kimball Rogers project, Kyle Hafen project. That's general plan amendment from low density residential to mixed use residential on 5.97 acres. Also, they want us to go back to back with the zone change. That'll be this 3rd public hearing. They've met with staff. We feel comfortable with their project. Looks like a real good project. Something the Santa Clara needs. And we'll see what if Planning Commission has any recommendations. Also on Planning Commission, we have an ordinance. We're modifying the PD ordinance. It was tabled last Planning Commission for some modifications. There's some discussion about the 30% open space in the PD zone. That's that'll be going to Planning Commission for their discussion. See if they like the revisions between Devin Snow and Bob Nicholson. Also, we're putting on there a commercial discussion as directed by council to see if they want to eliminate the commercial zone or whether they want to just make modifications to it so that it's similar to our PD zone and it gives us more control. So we'll open that discussion and see what they want to do there. Staff-wise, Selena had our secretary here, permit tech, had her daughter tested, was concerned about being exposed to COVID. So we had her tested and she stayed home and stayed out of the office for 3 days, but the test came back negative and she'll return to work tomorrow. The glass enclosures in the building department, the glass was, they put plexiglass instead of glass because the glass didn't fit the first go around. The glass in the parks department's been installed, and this coming week, we should get the door ordered and the glass, the columns installed, and then the glass company will come in and measure for glass in the administration building. So those are some of the things in the update. If you've got any questions for me?
Questions for Corey, council? Thank you, Corey.
Welcome.
Corey, I'm just looking through my inspections today on my house. Is this a good time to ask a few questions on it?
It would if we hadn't already discussed them earlier.
Oh, okay. I'm kidding.
You'll gotta fix them.
Rob, anything?
Yeah, just as up for next week on the agenda, we'll have the approval of the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget for approval next meeting. We'll also be setting a public hearing for the fiscal year 2020 budget amendment for June 24th. The court system, state courts haven't allowed the courts to hold live court sessions yet. They're doing everything like Zoom, by phone, and we don't know when that they'll be allowed to come back and have them in person, but they've issued some guidelines based on the phase of what they would like to see. So we're working on that. If we are in the green new normal, nothing is, as I've read, is required. They're all just recommendations. But in the yellow that we're in right now, there is quite a few required months to do. So we're working on trying to make sure we create a safe environment and are able to comply with those requirements. So the judge and the court clerks and the bailiffs we've been working through that. The couple questions, one of the things, the police chief Flowers let me know today, they're going to be holding a training on this Tuesday at 5 o'clock here in the banquet room. It's a training that's going to be talking about a lot of the issues that are going on in the country today, talking about use of force and those things. And I just wanted to let you guys know you are invited to attend that training, ask questions, see what they're doing, how they're training, that they're going to do. They'll have some food at 5 o'clock, but the mayor and council, you are invited to attend that training if you would like. What's that? Yes, 5 p.m. on Tuesday. Also, heads up, coming this next year, we are looking at changing accounting softwares. We have been looking at really the only one other one that is used in the state, and for municipalities our size, it's called Polaris. We did a demo with them back in actually 2010. We really liked it. They were relatively new, so there were some concerns. I remember speaking with Wally Ritchie, the city manager at the time, some concerns that they were new and how their customer service and support and things would work, but they've taken off and we had some meetings with them. Looks really good, so we're possibly bringing an agreement for approval to council as well to probably change that software. The initial conversion is a little bit of money, but the ongoing maintenance will roughly pay for itself in a year and a half. So we'll save on the monthly cost is much less. Also, question that we have on the banquet room. I have spoken with Corey, and I guess questions that are coming, some phone calls that staff are getting is, when will the banquet room be available for rental again? And I don't know if council has any feelings on that, if we are able to rent it out to people now, if they submit a plan of how they'll follow guidelines, or if we'll want to hold off until we actually get to the green phase and then open it up at that time.
It's going to be tough. They're talking for weddings and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm assuming most of them are weddings.
Anybody heard how they're doing weddings nowadays? Been to one lately? Yeah.
What's the number? I mean, couldn't we just, well, I don't know how you do it. But
it's the social distancing and the masks that probably, I mean, if it's a family unit, that's what I was asking, what's everybody else doing? What's going on out there? I don't mind doing it with a 50-person cap, as long as they recognize the risk and do some things to help minimize it.
Yeah, and that's why I wonder if they submit a plan prior to, here's what we're going to do. So the responsibility is on them to follow through the commitment they've given. And maybe it eases a little bit of that, but they'd have to submit something in writing. But I don't know if when we might be to green. I don't know if it would be anytime soon or we're still a ways out. Sometimes I feel like we're close and sometimes I don't. So
yeah, I thought we were going to get close, and then we had 150 for the last 7 days.
Is that off their ad 10 though, or is that the actual true accounting?
That's the true count. The scarier one is that there is the ICU beds. They're probably 90% full occupied. That's the one I've been watching is a hospitalization. There's It was like 17 or 18 COVID occupied. They've got 32 beds. They're typically a third full with elective type things or heart attacks or those types of things. So they're getting close.
Mm-hmm.
But we got a call in the morning. We'll find out some more information tomorrow.
Okay. I'll leave that there. We'll remain where we are until.
Yeah, I think we could probably do some research on how we would open the banquet room up. They're still limiting the gatherings pretty much, but.
Is that if they submit a plan to us and they keep it within the 50, is there any liability to the city for allowing them the use, knowing that they have to meet those restrictions? Or is it something we can have them sign an agreement as part of that, saying they assume the liability for that?
Yeah, it's a good question for Matt. Why don't you get with Matt?
Okay.
Brock and see if there's a hold harmless or something that we can put in the agreement.
There is currently in our rental agreement, I believe there is already in it, the state that they do sign to, and like indemnify and hold harmless the city if anything happens, but specific to COVID.
Yeah, new language for specific for COVID. Anything else, Brock?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Council, did you have anything you needed to bring up tonight we haven't already talked about?
There's just a couple questions. Maybe as I've watched the riots and that unfold, it may not hurt as a council to discuss or maybe review with Chief the plan. Again, we're one of those cities that if in fact a group was to get violent within our city, I don't believe we've got the police force. We're not a large police force. And so, it worries me a little bit when you hear these groups that are going into suburban America to cause violence, and maybe just a review of our policy and as a city, how we handle that. We feel we're in this great safe community, which we are, but you throw 1,000 protesters and it turns violent, we're probably not I don't know, it'd be interesting just to review that. And then secondly, just policy, with this whole COVID and pandemic, and as we're coming, hopefully we are moving to green, just as a council, maybe review, as things happen again, our policies and procedures, and just so there's a clear understanding. Again, it's all new to each one of us, and just so we have an understanding as a city and council and community, what it really is our plan and how we'll handle it, and or at least it's just all new. So just those couple things were on my mind.
That's part of that training next Tuesday night, is to go through that policy. How our police responds to an incident like the individual that was killed, and the training that they go through. And then I think on the response to those types of things to the city. So it's probably something that I would recommend, council, if you can get there Tuesday, that you do so. I think it'll be beneficial for you to be there. It's in the banquet room, 5 o'clock.
Agreed.
Anything else, council? Okay, we will call this meeting finished. Thanks everybody for your attention and for phoning in. And we will see you next week, if not sooner.